How did one blurred television picture turn Apollo 11 into an event millions could experience together? At 10:56 p.m. Eastern Time on the 20th of July 1969, Neil Armstrong put one boot onto the moon. Viewers saw a ghostly figure moving across a small screen.
Here is the route we will follow. First the lunar camera, then the ground network, and finally the living room. By the end, the roughness of the picture will explain why the broadcast still feels so immediate. Apollo 11 became a shared event, because a fragile chain carried the same uncertain image to millions of rooms.
The landing was made twice, first as engineering and then as public memory. Apollo 11 is usually told as a rocket story, but the public memory of the mission depends on another machine, a compact television camera mounted on the lunar module.
Without the camera and the long chain behind it, the landing would still have been historic. It would not have felt like a visit the whole world could witness together. Start with the camera. A normal television system was too demanding for the limited communications link between the moon and Earth.
NASA used a slow scan system that sent fewer lines and fewer frames than American television sets expected. The lunar picture therefore could not simply arrive and appear in a living room. On Earth, receiving stations had to capture the signal and convert it into the broadcast format used by television networks.
Every conversion cost detail. That is one reason the famous footage looks rough, even though the event behind it was precise. Now follow the signal. Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were at Tranquility Base. Their camera sent its picture through the lunar module's communications equipment.
Radio carried it roughly 384,000 kilometers to Earth. Large antennas listened for a signal that had become extremely weak by the time it arrived. Stations in Australia and the United States were positioned to receive the transmission as Earth turned. The path from boot to screen was not one wire.
Instead, it was a relay across geography, equipment, and institutions. The opening minutes showed how fragile that relay could be. For example, NASA switched between receiving stations while technicians searched for the best picture. The Parkes radio telescope in Australia became especially important.
Once the moon rose high enough, the dish could track its signal reliably. Other stations, including Honeysuckle Creek in Australia and Goldstone in California, were part of the receiving network. The familiar broadcast was assembled from real-time technical judgment, not delivered by one magical antenna.
Houston added another layer. Mission control was not a television studio.its. Rows of consoles became part of the drama. Controllers watched data, listened to voices, and made decisions while broadcasters translated technical events for viewers. A number on a console might tell an engineer whether the mission was safe.
A pause in an astronaut's voice might tell a family that something uncertain was happening. The same event moved through two languages at once: engineering information and public narration. Consider the object in the living room.
A cathode ray television was bulky furniture, often placed where a family could gather around it. Neighbors visited neighbors. Bars, schools, hotel lobbies, shop windows, and public spaces became temporary viewing rooms.
Audience totals vary by source and method, so any exact worldwide number should be treated as an estimate. What is not in doubt is the scale. The transmission reached an enormous international audience. It made a distant government mission feel immediate inside ordinary rooms.
Now compare television with the other records. A newspaper could report the landing the next morning. Radio could carry the voices. A photograph could preserve a sharper instant. Television combined movement, voice, delay, uncertainty, and reaction. Viewers watched Armstrong descend one rung at a time.
They waited through silence. They heard the sentence about one small step while looking at the body that spoke it. The image did not merely prove that the landing happened, it gave the event a tempo. The picture also hit as much as it revealed. It showed two astronauts on the surface.
It left out thousands of people who built hardware, wrote procedures, tracked signals, managed contractors, and calculated trajectories. It made the moon look empty and quiet, while the communication system around the event was crowded with labor. It turned a vast Cold War program into a few recognizable figures.
Politics remained in the frame. Apollo was a US project built during competition with the Soviet Union, and the broadcast advertised national power. Yet viewers outside the United States saw the same awkward steps and heard the same voices. Television did not erase the rivalry.
It gave the landing more than one meaning. This is where the camera stops looking like an accessory. Apollo consumed money, political attention, and years of labor. The broadcast made that cost visible to taxpayers and allies.
It converted technical capacity into public memory, and that memory shaped what Apollo meant after the hardware came home. The camera did not land the module, but it helped explain why the landing mattered. That memory was never perfectly live or perfectly neutral. Signals took time to cross space.
Ground equipment converted the picture. Networks narrated it. Later documentaries edited it. Even Armstrong's first words became a subject of discussion because the audio was not perfectly clear. The honest boundary is simple. We can reconstruct the transmission chain and the major decisions.
No recording gives us an untouched view from nowhere. Every historical image arrives through a system. Look again at the famous frame of Armstrong near the ladder. Its low resolution is part of its power now. The blur tells us the image traveled.
It passed from a camera designed around severe limits into radio and receiving dishes. From there, it moved through conversion equipment, control rooms, network lines, transmitters, and household sets. The weaknesses of the picture are evidence of the distance it crossed.
A perfect modern image would be easier to inspect, but it would not reveal the same communications problem. Apollo 11 became a shared event because institutions synchronized their work. Astronauts followed procedures. Antennas tracked the moon. Engineers protected the link. Controllers interpreted data.
Broadcasters explained pauses. Viewers rearranged their evening around a screen. No single participant owned the whole experience. The feeling of togetherness came from a chain that held long enough for people in different places to watch the same uncertain movement.
The point is not that television made the landing real. The engineering did that. Television made the distance visible and the waiting communal. The next time you see that pale figure step down the ladder, notice the screen as well as the astronaut. A public event is built twice. People first make it happen.
Then people and machines make it shareable. For more evidence-led stories like this, like the video and subscribe. See you in the next one.